Welcome everyone. Welcome to our final volume of the series, this series on destination discovery. This is volume 4, and you have seen us in conversation with our partners, owners of wildlife lodges and nature retreats. Sunil, I can't see myself. Sorry.
No, we can see you.
Okay, you can hear me as well? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you everyone for tuning in. Sorry about that. You have seen us in conversation with our partners from the wildlife and nature retreats across the country. This may be known to some of you. Rare India, by some quirky, strange luck, launched into this space of conservation marketing for tourism with our hero partners in the wildlife and nature retreat space, without actually meaning to do so. But where we stand and what we are today has more or less been defined by the first few partner hotels that have been on board. And the wildlife and nature retreats are definitely one among the hero partners that we have. We continue to learn and expand from what our lodge owners and nature retreat owners have been putting out as experiences under the wildlife and nature category. Our focus was to introduce travelers to the positives and potential for change at these lodges that we proudly promote as Friends of the Forest. Each was one of them, both operationally, conceptually, and through very strong narratives, have demonstrated how to run a lodge that was gentle on the environment, engage the community and the traveler, and at the same time created a shift in the traveler mindset. This has created certain powerful memories and indeed has pushed for change in what we know as wildlife tourism today. We have with us some of our key partner hotels. All of them have done exceptionally well in their areas of operation. What they've also done is brought into these wildlife and nature preserves and lodges some very interesting ideas and concepts, which was not always about getting onto a jeep and start chasing after the tail of the tiger or any other large mammal we are talking about. In fact, one hotelier famously told me one day, "I am about to non-safari you." And what that meant was he literally walked me through a jungle. Of course, scared me a little bit in the first instance, and when we went out, when he was laying out the protocol. But it also meant that I learned, I and some of the people who were traveling with me learned to understand the jungle from very close quarters. I'd like to first bring on board Ratika of Svasara Jungle Lodge, Tadoba, a very exclusive and an intimate lodge on the fringes of Tadoba National Park in Maharashtra. Ratika?
Yeah, thank you, Shoba. It's always, such a pleasure to be in the company of the other rare lodge owners, even virtually, because I feel, we all share the same eco ethos, yet all our camps are such, unique experiences. So I'm going to start with a visual, introduction, for Svasara. Just allow me to share my screen. You can see the screen now?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, great. So, one of the first interactions when we have with a new customer, it's of course, through our logo and name. And both these elements, have been central, to our essence. The branch tree illustrates that everything, on the planet is interdependent and related. And our name Svasara is actually a Sanskrit name, Svasar, and it means nest or a home that exists, in harmony with nature. So ours, is a rewilding journey. These are pictures, from our land when we started almost 10 years back. You can see we had a lone tree, which was a white cirrus tree. It's of course, still there. It was central to the design, of our spa and pool. And this morning I requested Ranjit, our general manager to send a picture, from the same point of sight. You can see that the tree, of course, is not visible from here, and it's completely, transformed. So, we've spent the last 10 years doing a lot of conscious, reforestation. It's been a mix of the native trees there, teak, bamboo, maua, and large, parts of the camps have also just, have the grasslands back. And because, the farming is integral, to our cuisine experience, we have a bit of farming around our outdoor dining pavilion. And this resulted in, the return of the original inhabitants, butterflies, birds, reptiles, small mammals, large mammals, right from a gray mongoose to sloth bear, leopard, even tiger, we've had, visit the camp. So today, because the subject is not just safaris, and we're going to be talking about, the different activities that we do. I also just wanted to give, two examples, of our design ethos and how that's always engaged our customers, to have conversations around the destination. So this is our point of arrival, and this is where we do our guest orientation. And almost always the conversation goes to the ceiling, and you can see the worldly art and how, there are motifs of not only the jungle, the animals, but also the fringe communities. You can see those, activities to the motifs. And then, when we go to our rooms, each of our room is inspired by a different habitat, not only the colors, but, the narratives on our soft furnishing, the cushions and the artwork, everything's inspired, from the habitat. So that's a short introduction, and I look forward to answering the questions. Stop sharing my screen. You're on mute, Shoba.
Coming up next is Surya Ramachandran. Surya wears several hats. One of them is being as the director of the Snow Leopard Lodge Ulley. As you can see, he is in glorious outdoors, and he's there presumably so that he can catch better connectivity, but I think he's trying to make me jealous. Over to you, Surya.
Thank you, Shoba. That I think definitely I'm not trying to make you jealous. It's absolutely about connectivity because I live in the wilderness. Hello, everyone. So good to be on this platform with all these people who are transforming wilderness tourism in our country on a daily basis. And I feel quite privileged to be a part of this thanks to the opportunity given to me by the people in Ladakh, which is where I work. So I'm going to share my screen, guys. Just give me a second. Yep. So can everyone see my screen?
Yes, Surya, okay. I can see your screen. Yeah.
Great. So that is where I work. Unfortunately, I don't have a great story about the logo or the design of the lodge like Ratika did, but it's pretty self-explanatory. We live in the land of snow leopards. We live in the land beyond the Himalayas, the Trans-Himalaya of India, in a place called Ladakh. And ours is a very simple place which is run by the community. In fact, the whole of the snow leopard tourism landscape is based on the operation by homestays, the villagers hosting people and creating a great experience. And what we did 4.5 years ago was basically go in there and try to up the game a bit and try and see if a few added comforts can actually bring in a wider audience to come and appreciate this animal and the landscape, because it was necessary because a whole lot of people were averse to the altitude, the cold, and the basic staying conditions. So that is kind of the idea behind the emergence of Snow Leopard Lodge. But one other thing which we did at Snow Leopard Lodge was we wanted to kind of move away from the whole concept of national parks or a protected area by the government. We wanted to see if we can actually encourage people who had no inclination towards conservation or tourism to start something where the benefits of it run and protect the place itself. And that is kind of where Snow Leopard Lodge's idea was born. And we found this beautiful village called Ulley in the in the mountains of Ladakh. Basically, this is the view from Ulley. It is basically a 5-house village, and there was a homestay there originally, and there was a lot of wildlife. But of course, it didn't come under the auspices of Hemis National Park. So it was a new area. It was an area which had wildlife, but obviously had the potential. But uh, there was nobody doing tourism there, or there was no one trying to work in that space simply because it wasn't a national park. So all we did was we went in there, built up an existing homestay, tried to work with the locals, and finally trained them up and brought it up to a speed where we can host a whole lot of people coming from all over the world to come see snow leopards, and maybe to the best of our abilities at 4,000 meters, try and provide them with the comforts required to see this cat. Um, yeah, that's the first snow leopard everyone sees when they come to the lodge, because these are small dolls made by the women of the village and also by our spotters. And so I've had people who come sometimes, and just to make sure they have a picture of a snow leopard, they do something like this. So I thought we should start with that before we actually get into seeing an actual cat. There you go. I worked in the landscape of cats all my life. I worked with tigers, I worked with leopards. I had a brief stint in the Northeast where I was trying to find a cloud leopard, but never in my dreams did I think I will be spending so much time with the snow leopard of the Himalaya. And because all we hear about it is that it's this elusive animal which no one gets to see. But thanks to the skill of the guys who we work with, our local spotters and trackers, what they do is pretty much magic. That's the only way to describe it. And the people who have come there and joined us would definitely agree. So it's been a great journey, working in a non-protected area, changing minds, changing attitudes, and seeing the wildlife bounce back. We didn't plant trees. We don't have any trees when we went there. It is a treeless desert, but it's a beautiful place nonetheless. So that's that. I'm just going to stop sharing my screen. Okay.
Thank you, Surya. Thank you. Over to Ali now. Ali actually, as a part of Jahanuma, what is now called Jahanuma Wilderness, which because I think we're going to now slowly become a collection of wildlife lodges. The second one, the first one is of course Reni, Pani, and the second one is the Bori Sanctuary Lodge. So over to Ali to take you forward on his journey on the Wildlife Lodge. I'd like to intervene by saying Satpura, in my opinion, was like was a very different national park when it came up on scene, and I was a part of the first few people who started to promote Satpura, and it was quite difficult because did you have tigers? No. Do you have leopards? No. What do you have? Bison. What do you have? Bears. It was very difficult to explain to people why they should be including Satpura into their wildlife itinerary. But it has come a long way, and it is thanks to people like Ali, who worked very, very hard to bring it to the fore. Thank you. Ali, over to you now.
Thank you, Shoba, for having me on this platform. I'm just going to quickly share a screen and then show a bit of what we do as you introduced that Satpura, at least in the central Indian landscape, was one of the first few parks that started the non-jeep format of exploration. And it was a little more difficult to promote, but now it's become very much part of the central Indian circuit. And, you know, we do get quite a lot of guests our way. So let me just quickly share the screen. Can you see my screen?
Yes, yes.
I'm just going to put it on full screen. Sorry. So yes, so as Shoba briefly introduced, we used to run Reni Pani Jungle Lodge for the past 10 years, and now we've started the Bori Safari Lodge, and we have rebranded to Jahanuma Wilderness. So Jahanuma is also our parent brand, which where we run a hotel in Bhopal. And the name Jahanuma is a Persian origin. Jahanuma means a view of the world. So, you know, automatically we've kind of used this across our platform because any travel company or any organization involved in tourism always gives a nice, at least attempt to give a nice view of the world. Moving on to the Satpura model. So we are blessed, to have, as you can see in this photo, mountains, forests, river systems, and also, which you can't see in this photo, but grasslands. So because of this, there was a diversity of landscape, which we thought will be an ideal habitat to utilize for activities, which is not just about jeeps, but about other activities. So as you can see, the diverse landscape allows you, obviously jeep safari is a important part of this whole experience, but walking can be done in the national park. We do a very interesting camping program where you can walk right from Pachmari, which is a hill station, down to the lower areas, and canoeing also. So just something interesting about this canoeing activity. First of all, it's great for birding, and these canoe guides are actually used to be fishermen before. So the forest department, along with the lodges over here, work to rehabilitate these villagers to becoming canoe guides from their fishing past, and then now they show great bird life and wildlife to the guests who come to visit us. And obviously you have breathtaking landscapes also. This is one of the scenes from our camping program. And at least in the Central Indian perspective, I don't think you get such experiences in other parks, just because Satpura, the model is about low volume but high experience.
Absolutely.
Again, this camping program which I talked about allows us to walk in the landscape, be in areas which don't have any village close by, and it's very interesting to explore. And just quickly, in the interest of time, it's a tourism beyond tigers. So as Shoba was saying that she used to have a tough time marketing it because there were no tigers, but sloth bear is one of the key species that we showcase, and it is endemic to India. So anyone who wants to see sloth bear has to come to India or Sri Lanka to see it. And to keep the guests engaged, we also have a bit of a iconic five. So we try to show the wild dog, the gore, the giant squirrel, and leopard when the guests come. And obviously, when you do so many activities, when you walk, when you canoe, you need to have a great emphasis on, naturalists. And we've worked hard to do this. In fact, Surya was a colleague in Satpura for quite a few years, and he's a brilliant naturalist as well. So Satpura has had a kind of ethos of producing really good naturalists, and it's very much part of the experience over here, because without their interpretation, a non-jeep safari is not lively at all.
Yes, absolutely.
And finally, just the wildlife that we get in the property itself, which can keep guests engaged. So again, much like Ratika was saying about rehabilitating the landscape, our land was quite degraded before, and over the years we've maintained the habitat, and now we have quite a lot of wildlife coming in. So with this, I'll end the short introduction, and I will be happy to talk further as the time goes on.
Thank you, Ali. Now to bring in Daleep. Hi, Daleep. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Hi.
Hi.
Yeah. Here's Daleep from Jim's Jungle Retreat. Again, very special in the way we've tried to promote Corbett under Delhi guidance, because everybody knows Corbett. It's very close to Delhi. But how do you promote Corbett for the richness and for the absolute diversity of experiences that you have? And I think Daleep and his team have absolutely, put together fabulous experiences that kind of has become very, very granular, and that takes you into every aspect of, like a wilderness experience. Over to Daleep.
Hi, thanks, Shoba. Lovely to be here with everyone. So I'll quickly go and share my screen so that I can just get into the short presentation that I have for you. All right. So this first slide shows you an image of a tiger with various different animals in it, and there's a saying at the bottom that says, "Seek the tiger, find the jungle." I'm just going to zoom in so you can get a clearer picture of what's inside this. And it's made up of many animals: the pangolin, butterflies, crocodiles, gharial, deer, elephant, and we've actually done little competitions with children when they come to the property to sort of cite, to tell us how many species they can see on this. And this came about because the idea of conservation is also critical through communication and how you interpret the forest, as Ali was saying. And I was sitting with my illustrator and my designer, and I was talking about how the tiger is such an important species for the preservation of a forest, because it's the predator. And if you take the predator out, everything else will collapse in the ecosystem. And that's how we came up with this idea of a tiger's face holding all the other species that exist in a forest. And the tagline, "Seek the tiger and you'll find the jungle." And that's how we try and communicate all our experiences at the property. And in fact, after this illustration, we came up with our logo, which is the pug mark of a tiger. And as you can see over here, the pad is the tree with leaves. And it's looking, there's aquatic species, reptilian, insects, and bird species. So all of them exist because of the top predator. So this communication continues, as I said, both verbally and through non-verbal clues. So this is what our property looks like. It's on the edge of the forest. There's a river next to us. It's a seasonal river. So this side is the forest and this side is the river. And on these 15 acres, we've replanted, as Ratika was talking about her property. It was farmland, and we literally recreated a jungle by grassland creations, water bodies, and over 100 different tree species, which has brought the entire property alive. And the idea is basically, as Jim Corbett would have sort of, imagined what his legacy to be, which is his principles were pretty much forest regeneration, minimal disturbance, community involvement. And that is what we have tried to do. And those are our principles that we hold very dear. And you can see at the property, this is the lodge, and there are water bodies everywhere. There's trees. This is a cottage. Again, a lot of plantations being done. You sit out in the lookout from our verandas, and there's just bird life everywhere. And then I just thought I'd show you some room images. All the work that has been done, the craftsmanship inside the rooms, has been done locally. These are some sit-out points, again showing you the different areas of the property and the landscape and how it's emerged from flat, barren agricultural piece of land. This is what it looks like now. And I'm extremely proud of our cafe, which allows you to be outside, but sitting inside. It's got thatch on top, which is how the Gujars, which is a Van Gujar pastoral community that lives in our neighborhood. And that's how they create their dwelling. So we borrowed architectural ideas from them. And this is another sit out at that cafe. Again, you can see all the planting we've done and the trees over the last 20 years. And this is a Van Gujar Dera, which I was referring to with that thatch. Anyway, so I guess, how do I get out of this? Stop? No.
Yeah.
I think I'm
If you just, if you just stop sharing your screen, or Sunil can help you. Yes, thank you. All right, so thank you. Thanks for that, Daleep. That was really wonderful. Ali, I just wanted you to highlight, one of the things that really fascinates me is the logos that you people have used, all of you, in fact. trying to veer away from the typical tiger images most lodges have. That's, when I got into this, market conservation tourism, every wildlife lodge was either a Mowgli or a, like anything to do with, all these comic books, or it had a tiger on it, right? So the logos that eventually came about, like the tree at Kipling Camp, or, the tree of life in your case, Ali at Reni Pani had a very, very different logo, right? Ali, can you unmute yourself and talk about that one particular logo, simply to highlight the idea of conservation, which does not necessarily to start and begin with the tigers?
Yeah, so the logo at Reni Pani, and much like what we have at Jahanama Wilderness also, Reni Pani was a depiction of a sambar deer, which is obviously one of the major prey species in Satpura. And in the new logo also, we've have a caricature of an ungulate. So ungulates actually portray a lot of elegance, and obviously they are the prey species of the tiger and other predators. So they represent the forest in a good way as well. So we thought we'll just do something different. Plus, the area around Bhopal and Satpura have had a history of very large, heads of sambar back in the day when hunting used to happen. Obviously, now it's all changed, but in the early 20th century, in fact, one of the largest, the world record of a sambar head is from close to Bhopal, within 30 kilometers, and same with the cheetal. So I guess we've got a historic affinity with
that's my favorite story, and that's what I was looking for. So diving into more ideas around non-safari wilderness experiences, one of the things that I always talk about is how do we take conservation to the travelers? What in the way that we represent our activities and the things that we do in our lodges can inspire and also get the travelers to understand conservation at a different level, right? So Ratika, we will begin with you. I know you all do a lot of things to get people to understand the entire range of the animals and insects and birds and plants. So what are the experiences that at Svasara Lodge that address every species, every little denizen of the forest?
Yeah, I think all the lodge experiences that we do have all been initiated by our naturalist team. We've had a great team with very varied interests. So Shorno, who's been with us for many years, had an avid interest in butterflies, and so he initiated butterfly conservation at the camp, and so we do butterfly observations, and with that there's a lot of macro photography that happens on the camp. And besides butterflies, with birds, we do walks on the camp, and we also take guests to there are a lot of natural lakes on the periphery, so we take guests there. And it's nice in the sense that these are the birds that you see on those lakes are not necessarily you would find on a safari in the jungle. So it's good opportunity to learn about different bird life. So besides that, we every evening we have a interactive session with the naturalists. We show documentaries, and that's the time where they are learning a lot about Tadoba, and then if they have any questions, we answer that. We also have a water hole, so
the camera trap, right?
Yeah, the camera trap. So that's a good discussion point.
Discussion point. Great. Surya, I know you take great pains to explain the habitat to people. I traveled with you, and you've taken me to Lato to show what the habitat is like, which is, I think, is a very important aspect when you're trying to explain to people why a particular animal lives and thrives in that area.
So, Shoba, you're absolutely right. When I first went to Ladakh 5 years ago, I was just thrown in there and said I was asked to figure things out. And I spent 5 months in this small village called Ulley, which is where we run the lodge now. And it took me a long time to actually understand how the place works, because I'm someone who has worked in South India, the Western Ghats, in Central India, like Ali said, in Satpura and Kanha. But when I was suddenly thrown into the landscape of Ladakh, where there were no trees, the only plant I could identify initially was a kind of lichen. And so it took me a lot of reading on geology. It took me a lot of reading on the history of the landscape, the geological history of the landscape, before I could understand distributions, before I could understand why certain things are found in certain places, right from the ibex, right from a Apollo butterfly, or finally to the snow leopard. So everything had its place in this mosaical landscape, because if you look at Ladakh, for everyone, it is just one big mountainous place. But if you actually look at it geologically, you have the Zanskar range, you have the Indus, you have the Lato Valley, you have the Ladakh range, you have alpine meadows, you have the Changtang Plateau. So you have a whole lot of different things happening. And that has actually defined where you get different things. For example, I'll just talk about the Apollos, the butterfly. So Apollo is probably the oldest living butterfly in the world. It is actually supposed to have existed in its current form from the pre-Ice Age era. So how do the butterflies survive that? So these Apollos, what they actually did was, in their larval stage, they went underground. So when the Ice Age was happening, they could survive because they were not frozen. They had already gone underground into a kind of dormant stage. So when they came out, what happened was, after all these years, every mountain range in Ladakh has a different species of Apollo, simply because of geological separation. And that's how beautiful
Wow.
it is. So if you go to Kardungla, if you go to Changla, if you go to Taglangla, or if you climb to the pastures above Ulley, you get a different species of Apollo in each place. And that is how beautiful geological separation actually works in Ladakh. So without knowing this, you can't learn much. I mean, you can go see a snow leopard, you can see an ibex thanks to the spotters. But if you want to call yourself a naturalist there, you have to start from the bottom.
Absolutely. And relaying this to your travelers, which is fascinating, especially I think when children are traveling, to be able to explain this to them and to take them through that entire landscape, I think is very, very important. Ali, one thing I always appreciated in Satpura is the walking safari. But one of the things also that is told to me is that the least walking is done by Indian travelers, but that you have changed that. I mean, when I was there in December, all of us were walking, right? How does walking change the wildlife experience? I mean, why is it so important for you to walk in the parks, and why can't many more people do this?
I think the walks, as you mentioned, is changing quite a lot. Early on, it was, a lot of inbound tourists would do it, but now more and more in the last 5 years, I've seen that, the discerning Indian traveler is as diverse as an international traveler to experience different things. And the walks are special in Satpura. We have different walking options. We have the short walks, which can be done in about 2 to 3 hours, either in the morning or the afternoon. And those walks, sometimes you end up seeing big mammals like sloth bear and leopard also. But the idea of that walk is to actually, see the thing that you would probably miss out on a jeep safari. Covering tracks and signs, looking into the trees. Satpura is a dry deciduous and a mixed deciduous forest. So there's a variety of trees. In fact, Pradeep Krishan was inspired by the forests of Pachmari, and he wrote his latest book, The Trees of Central India. So there's a lot of diversity of trees which can be covered. And when you came, we did those tree walks
Tree
also
walks, yeah.
in December. So one aspect of the walk is definitely identification of trees. And now, luckily, and thanks to Pradeep with this book, it has become so easy that even a layperson can actually recognize trees through leaves, bark, the fruit, etc. And then, of course, it's good for birding, and for the smaller things also, butterflies, insects, you get to see. ant lions, which you can't really, see on the drive. So it's a completely wholesome experience. And then obviously when you're walking, you're not really separated, you're not in a vehicle. So there's a thrill of seeing a deer or a gaur is also different when you see, it's a much more active viewing compared to
Absolutely.
when you're
Yeah.
in a jeep. So that's something interesting. And then obviously we have the longer walks, which involves the camping. That is a little more for walkers, but these short walks, I think 2 to 3 hours, we cover 3 to 4 kilometers, not more, but because we are seeing so many things, we do it slowly. And definitely all sorts of people can do it, all ages. Kids below 12, we don't suggest. We only do 12 years and above. And it's definitely something that all sorts of people can do as long as they mentally prepare for it.
Prepared for walks. Yeah,
Yeah,
fantastic. Also, like you seeing a scratch mark on a tree or on the bark of a tree or something, and looking at it close up, I think it's another experience altogether.
Yeah.
Daleep, we Daleep, do I have you?
Yeah.
Yeah, Daleep. Yeah, Daleep. I know we've talked endlessly about your concept of Mahavan, which I find fascinating. So just I know, and the guard, that his name Harilal, right?
Hiralal.
Hiralal takes you around, and in his own way, he tries and explains how and why he bought a particular tree. And for those who understand Hindi, it also is fascinating to see how his knowledge about the trees and what the elephant likes, or what what happens to which particular bird will feed on this particular seed or something like that. It's fascinating to hear that. But how did you come upon this Mahavan idea?
Yeah, great question, Shoba. Thanks. Well, I think you go back to who Jim Corbett was and after whom our lodge is named. It's an homage to him, and he's the one who's credited with having created the boundaries of Corbett Tiger Reserve, which is actually Jim Corbett National Park. And the landscape in Corbett is extremely varied. You have the Shivaliks, which are these ancient mountains. You have the Himalayan foothills. You have riverine landscapes, which basically include two rivers that flow through the park. One is the Kosi and one is the Ramganga. So you have grasslands, you have riverine vegetation. The topography is so spectacular and so varied, and therefore it hosts so many different species. So the idea for us was to recreate some of that in our little corner of Corbett. The village Dhela that we're in is surrounded by the buffer forests of Corbett. And so the Mahavan idea was also borrowing from our Vedic ideology, our Vedic past. There are three forests that traditionally have had resonance with India and people living in India. The Tapovan, the Srivan, and the Mahavan.
Mahavan, yeah.
And the Mahavan was a forest that was just supposed to be left untouched.
A large forest, yeah.
Large forest, which you wouldn't interfere with and let the animals reside there. Of course, we exist in that forest because we've recreated it. But the idea is so that people can understand that, while we do development work and we progress economically, there are certain areas that should be absolute no-goes, and
Yes,
there are certain forests that we shouldn't touch. I think so that kind of information is relayed through these walks on the property. So Hiralal, who you referred to, he does a walk. Other naturalists do their walks. In fact, we have a whole team of naturalists who have come from various walks of life. Who have interests in birding, who have interests in plants, who have interest in insects, and our walks are created around their interests. And we do 1 hour, 2 hour walks within the property. We have over 100 different bird species that visit the property. And right outside the property, we have a riverbed. So you can go for a walk on that riverbed, and you've seen, as Ali was saying, you just feel like you're connected with the earth. And that is so important for a visitor who's trying to understand what a forest is. Being in a jeep, you're whizzing by, you're saying, "Tiger, where's the tiger? Where's the tiger?" But
Absolutely.
here you actually connect with the land, and seeing, deer, a herd of deer cross you, your heart starts pumping, and even though they're so peaceful, you're still that. You feel it's an unusual feeling because you don't witness it. You can walk in a crowd and not feel that of human beings, but when you encounter a herd of deer, it's a completely special.
At close quarters. Yeah, I think that's what it is. Daleep, before you forget, I wanted you to elaborate on Tapovan and Shrivan. I know these were, I think, traditional forest management systems. Coming from Vedika, they say. So you said Mahavan, which is the large unending forest, right? Within that we had Tapovan.
So then you have the Tapovan and the Shrivan, which were used to go and fish, take out produce from the forest. So you would harvest forest produce from there. And then there was Shrivan, which was about going and doing tapasya.
The Tapovan is where the holy men, the Tapovan and the Shrivan,
Yes, as an Aztec, you would go and sort of go and do your
meditation and your penance there, which kind of automatically the forest dwellers protected that area. So Tapovan was that. I find that fascinating. Yes. Ratika, this is over to you. So typically when the parks open, and Tadoba has been seeing this, they said at one point in time they said they're going to keep it open through monsoons and things like that. But what are the non-season activities or non-season engagements that you would be promoting, so that a visit to the forest or visit close to the forest becomes, this isn't a seasonal thing, okay? Because now the tiger sighting is better. April, the tiger sighting is better. Instead of that, every time you want to feel connected to nature and wildlife, you can go there, right? So what are your non-season activities?
So we actually no longer have a non-season. Last 2 years, we've consciously, kept the camp open throughout the year.
Yes.
July, August, September, the buffer area subject to the forest decision, we really find out last minute. So we don't promote, safaris at all for the monsoons. What we've done last 2 years, couple of things. We've done yoga camps. That's worked very well.
Yes.
It's really rejuvenating to do meditation, in that setting. We've also done a lot with our cuisine. We've, everything, not just cooking demos, but to actually learn about the crops that are grown in that region. We take the guests, to the farm. They also go to the local markets, to find out. It's a good opportunity to interact, with the community there. And then we come back and, we do the meals, around the local cuisine, etc. So there's cuisine-based things that we've done. We've also been discussing, not yet, but something that we are exploring to do are art camps. A lot of our guests who come to Svasara paint, and even when they come during season, they spend hours in the forest. If they find something inspiring and they're painting for hours, even on the camp. So, they suggested, why not, have some, art camps, for all ages, not just, children. Monsoons doesn't really work very well for doing young naturalist, programs, but that's something, again, that we've done during our May-June season, when we don't get a lot of, our peak, wildlife crowd. So those are some of the activities.
Yes, great. Thank you so much for that. Surya, if I were to ask you to look after or to engage guests in times when, you're not interested in snow leopards, but what would you take them to Ladakh or Kutch or even the Western Ghats for?
Well, I'll bring them home, to be honest.
Yes. I know.
Well, you can see where I live.
I know.
This is where I live, and
it's beautiful.
And the home has been fantastic. I just think any wilderness at any time of the year is beautiful. I don't think there's a particular season, as people like to call it.
Yes.
I kind of think when you, what has been amazing for me the last 1 month, I've been using my laptop a lot, sitting in one place in my veranda on a wooden table. I've seen 26 different spiders on that table in the last 1 month.
Wow.
And it's just a table, and that's a safari in itself. So every day when I sit on that table, I look around what's crawling over my laptop, what's going around on the other side of the veranda. And that's as good as it gets. I mean, I don't know about seasons. I don't know about where I'll take them. It depends on what they're interested in, I guess.
Absolutely.
But if they're open to just coming and exploring a wilderness,
yes.
I think there's no better place than any place. It doesn't matter where you are.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Ali, we spoke about this. We spoke about this in the morning yesterday when we were talking about. So initially, when we were talking about Reni, there were a lot of things to do in September, for instance, right? And for even this this festival that you did for your 10-year anniversary was bringing people together. See, for me, at lodges, even sitting among people who think alike, who are able to discuss nature, wildlife, their travels, again becomes a very interesting proposition. So what are the things that you would recommend people to come for?
I mean, in the engagement, say in the off season, definitely, as you were saying, first of all, people coming together itself, the conversations people have, conservation is a lot about communication, and that itself helps. As Surya was saying, there's no real, every season in the forest is nice and interesting. On the Reni Pani side, in terms of a tourism perspective, because we have, the access is a little difficult. So it's not, I love to be there in the monsoon, but I guess for most guests, it will not be so easy because the rains bring about, a lot of interesting things out like snakes and other insects and reptiles. But there's a niche which could engage in such programs. Also on the Bori side where we are right now, our new lodge, there's a nice road access. So in a normal year, we were planning to keep it open actually throughout the year. And then do activities which would, like Ratika was saying, engage in the village life, not just focus on the national park. Obviously, in MP also the buffer zones are open in the monsoon. So walking is a good opportunity, even in the rain, searching for, snakes, reptiles, butterflies, all these sort of things. So there's a lot to do actually in the monsoon, as long as we can actually reach out to the correct audience.
The right kind of audience,
Yeah.
Thank you, Ali. Daleep, you're not very far from Delhi, so it is it's great connectivity, long weekends, long stays. So again, what are the various other things? I know you did literary festival, literature fests and things like that. So what are other opportunities for people to look out to the forest for?
I think a lot of it's been covered by both Ratika and Ali and Surya. But we've had a couple of art retreats. We do a young rangers program for kids. And that's really interesting because there's a whole bunch of different things that is thrown into it, from knowing about the landscape, why it's important to protect and conserve our wildlife and the landscapes that exist.
The termite walk.
The termite walk, I was just coming to that. Also, just sort of being able to identify species, the ecosystems that they function in, and how they are interdependent with each other. The termite walk is quite fascinating. I think along with bees, the termite ranks, I think, as high up there as an alien species. Just so fascinating.
Yes.
How they create their termite mounds. This little ant creates a mound that is as, in ratio wise, as high as the Burj Khalifa. And it's as high as it's as low below the ground. And then there are worker ants, and the soldier ants, and the flying termites, and then there's the queen termite, and there's the king termite, the only two who do the reproduction, and it's all air conditioned because it has to be humid in the right temperature. I mean, it's fascinating how they've created their little colonies. They're interesting experiences. You know, it's just being in the forest. I think, you know, whether you're meditating, reading a book, sitting and eating food that grows during the monsoon, like colocasia leaves and other things that are, you know, growing around us, berries. So there's so many things to do. It's just being out in the wilderness, I think.
Absolutely, absolutely. We're running out of time, but I have a quick question for all of you. We're increasingly talking about how people can participate and contribute, right? And as conservation-based tourism projects for all of you, one thing that would attract people to come to you is if they can see how they can be with each one of you and contribute in some way. Of course, being there itself is a contribution because you're all community-based, and you know, just staying with you means that they are contributing to the local economy. But how is it that they can contribute efficiently and also go away from, you know, from a holiday with you, having transformed something within themselves? Yeah. Well, let's begin with you, Daleep, and then we'll take it over to the others.
Well, I think, you know, we had a guest. In fact, it was a friend of mine who called me from England, and he said his nephew was going to graduate soon, and he was studying in England, and he needed to do this out of school experience. And his father and his friend came along for this. So they spent about 15 days with us. And we created an entire campaign for them where they worked with the village school, you know, really a ramshackle school in the forest, some kilometers away from us. And they did safaris, of course, their walks. So there was a lot of interpretation activity happening there as well. Then we tied up with a wonderful organization called Waste Warriors, which is involved in the Corbett landscape to collect waste and dispose of it in the best manner possible. So it was 15 days, and after they'd finished, you know, both the kids, both the boys said that, you know, whether this was for school or not, I mean, this is something that has completely changed the way we look at India and changed the way we look at our wild spaces and our rural spaces, and how they saw the villagers, the respect that the villagers have for the place that they live in and the forest that they sometimes utilize. I think that relationship, understanding that, and then understanding where they stand as far as consuming, you know, in this buying things and consuming products, there's a lot of understanding that they went away with.
They went away with it. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, that's really great. Yeah, Ratika, you'd like to?
Most, you know, of our guests are most, you know, intrigued with the staff that they meet. You know, they really like to know, you know, more about them, and that's actually one of the easiest things to also do, to, you know, do a walk with one of our team members. We've done that, you know, multiple times where you know, the team person has then, you know, escorted them to their homes and given them I mean, like a transparent view of what village life is like.
It's like, yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, Tadoba now, especially on our side, has a lot of issues with man-animal conflict and all that. So, you know, to get that perspective as well, you know, that usually we're there for, I mean, viewing wildlife, but how it plays day to day, you know, with I mean, every
people who are
in the village. So then along, you know, with that, everything in the village, we've also done, you know, a lot of volunteering, you know, for the school. So they've been involved in that, and to actually go there and teach, you know, spend some time, you know, with the school children themselves. And yeah, I mean, I have a picture actually here that I can just quickly, you know, share. Nice. So,
yeah.
Yeah. So, to be able to
Be
go
able
there.
to, yes,
Yeah.
that's
That was
fantastic. Yes, lovely. Yeah, Ali. So, how can people participate and?
Yeah, sure. So Shoba, as you mentioned that the biggest thing tourists and travelers as such do by coming to such places is being there itself, because we are working with the communities, and that itself is a contribution, and then carrying back these memories in terms of stories as custodians, where they can talk about conservation and what is happening in the various destinations, and through pictures, that itself contributes a lot towards conservation. But apart from that, we obviously like my colleagues over here, we work with the local school, and we've adopted a school which is just in our neighboring village. That village also is called Reni, Pani, and guests can contribute in that. In fact, last year we had a school group that had come from Switzerland, and they enjoyed the whole experience so much that they wanted to make it a perpetual program, where for the next 5 years the kids would come stay with us for 10 days. They would invest in the infrastructure upgrade of the school, and work with our team to actually build a project which would have a end result. So obviously, unfortunately, because of this COVID crisis, that's been shelved a little later, but we hope to restart that. And we also work with the forest department in small initiatives like distributing filter-fitted bottles for the forest guards, or binoculars for the guides. And now we are going to start more projects like that through the MP Tiger Foundation Society also, so people can contribute through that with a specific focus to upliftment in Satpura for a specific project that we are planning. So these are some ways. In Bori Safari Lodge, we are also going to engage because we are close to the village. So we want to have a lot of village-based activities and slowly develop homestay experiences also, where guests could stay a couple of nights at the lodge and then actually go and stay at a villager's place. We will only do up the homestay with our CSR,
Yes.
and then the guests could actually pay a proper tariff to the locals to stay, and have a very local experience and contribute towards the local economy. These are few of the ways of engaging with the audience.
Absolutely, yeah. Thank you.
Community.
Yeah. So, Surya, how can in the landscape that you work in, how can people?
Well, Shoba, the thing is, when people choose to come to a non-protected area, which is not officially a national park, that in itself is a big service that they're doing. The fact that they're choosing to come and stay with us in our place, which is basically run just by the community, and the community has chosen to protect the wildlife simply because there is a lot of benefits that they have been seeing over the years of wildlife being in their backyard. So the very fact that they choose to come to us is probably the biggest contribution that they can do to us. And apart from that, as you know, we work very closely with the community and the Snow Leopard Conservancy Trust, which is working with the villagers and the people who live amongst snow leopards. So every guest who comes and stays with us is contributing a small amount directly to the conservancy and to the local fund. That is a direct thing. But when people come to us and see how hard our boys work and how much it means for them to find a snow leopard on a daily basis for the people who visit, there have been people who've gone back to the US and enrolled with the Snow Leopard Conservancy Trust in California. There have been people who've been contributing extra money to the Snow Leopard Conservancy Trust in India, because one of the biggest problems we had at the start were the snow leopards were actually taking a lot of livestock, but the villagers were happy because they were able to make up for that with income from tourism. But at some point we felt it is not the right way, because we're changing the lifestyle of people because extra money is coming from tourism, so they may be going away from their original ways. So a lot of people, our guests, Snow Leopard Conservancy Trust and the lodge put in money together, and we were able to cover the corrals from top with a wire mesh. A simple solution like that, and the whole of last season, we've had no livestock kills by snow leopard in our area. We've had only wild kills. So there is enough wildlife, but obviously livestock is an easier catch for a big cat. So this small change, this small contribution or a thought process has kind of made sure that they don't shift away from their roots while promoting tourism or wildlife
Tourism,
tourism
yeah.
in their backyard. So our basic focus is when you choose to come stay with us, it means a lot to us. It starts there, and then you choose to take it wherever you want to.
Fantastic. So you mean tourism? The tourism initiative only supplements what they're already doing, or is that what you're saying?
So, yeah. So basically, most of Ladakh, especially rural Ladakh, is a very self-sufficient community.
Yes.
What they do is basically they take care of their yak and sheep. They grow their produce in their backyard, and they stay through the winter with that. So, snow leopard, the money coming from snow leopards or snow leopard tourism is basically an additional income. Yes,
Okay.
but
Yes.
for some areas, it has become such a big benefit that they've stopped actually burning wolf dens, which used to happen before. They used to kill wolves because the wolves take their livestock all the time.
Livestock. Yes.
So a lot of positives were there, but we also felt certain people were shifting away from their traditional ways because of this new life, a new lease of life, if I may call it that.
Yes.
So a few tweaks in the system and in the thought process over the years, and the last one season has been beautiful. I think we are kind of getting there, but even us, we are still learning, trying out new things. Let's see what happens.
Yes, great. Now, quickly to some questions that we have. So this is for Surya. This is for you from Claudia. Hi, Surya. Would you be able to mail me a list of winter birds that can be seen at Ulley? So
yeah,
you
absolutely.
You have Claudia's. And from Claudia, this is for Ali. I prefer the idea of not only tiger tourism. Great pictures, by the way. On a scale of 10 to 90, how would you rate the chance of seeing a sloth bear?
In Satpura, the sloth bear, if you stay for 3-4 nights, usually most guests end up seeing. Recently, the sighting because of tiger population going up has become a little tricky just this season. But luckily, the Bori area now has abundance of bears. So that area has become a good area for sloth bears. So either of our places, if you spend a couple of nights, you should be able to see a sloth bear. Almost assured. We can't guarantee anything, but
yes.
almost assured.
So, Kriti is runs a lovely travel company in Mumbai. She's asking you, Ali, that if you're 12 years and cannot go, unless you're 12 years and you cannot go into the nature or jungle for a walk, what are the other activities they can do at Jahannama Wilderness?
I mean, if you're below 12 years, is it?
Yeah, less than 12 years.
I mean, usually the jeep safaris are there, the village visits are there. The boat ride can be done. The landscape, the Tava Reservoir is extensive, and you have a good opportunity to see a lot of nice landscape and bird life. We also engage with the school, so a visit to the school is quite interesting for the kids. And we do pottery as well, so you know we have local
also Ali, because you are 40 acres, right? Like you can actually take the 12-year-olds, less than 12-year-olds, on a walk around the property itself. I mean, it's quite a Yeah,
as you're mentioning that within the property itself, we get a lot of bird life, a lot of mammals also. In fact, I showed a picture in the starting, even leopards come in. We've been getting, just this morning, Irwin, our manager, messaged me saying that there was a leopard in the property at 5:30. So with kids, we can definitely do short walks in and around the property. It's just forested, and that has a lot of wildlife opportunity to be seen.
Absolutely. This is a question for all of you, and I think it's very, very pertinent. In fact, I had it in my list and I didn't ask you. Amar Grover from UK. Hi, Amar. He says, as lodge operators, I imagine that one of your biggest challenges is to find and train good guides who can really engage and inform guests. In the Indian context, has this process become easier? Is there a formal structure system for naturalist guide training recognition? I think all of you should take this question. So, Ali, would you like to go first on the naturalists? Yeah.
So there's two parts to this. One is obviously the park guides who are employed by not employed, but they work with the forest department. So forest department conducts training processes. At least in Madhya Pradesh, they do a annual training. I'm sure in other states also. And but a lot of it is largely learn on the job, and the priority of the forest department is to give these jobs to local people. So it might take a little longer for these guides to become very good, but the good part is that they're all local, and that is giving them an incentive to save the wildlife. In terms of naturalists who are at the lodges, in India, a lot of it is still self-taught. Lot of lodges have good training programs, and there are some companies which have started like a certified naturalist training program, like Pagdandi Safari runs, a program called ProNat. So these are some initiatives which are happening, but largely it is still unorganized, and most of us have learned our wildlife through teaching
Through
oneself.
experiences.
Yeah, through experience, and just a dedication to learn. So
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
it.
So Surya, this is to you, being a naturalist, and I know that the quality of naturalists has really improved, and and a great naturalist is able to bring the entire forest alive. I mean, I've done some fabulous trips with you.
Yeah. Thanks, Shoba. You're far too kind. But you're still not come home. I've been calling you for years now.
That,
But so the thing with naturalists is, of course, Ali has covered what I wanted to say pretty much in the Central Indian landscape and in the South Indian landscape. But what is interesting about Ladakh, or where we operate in Snow Leopard Lodge, is that what we found when we went there is the people were innately free spirited. They were not shy. They were willing to communicate. They were willing to take up the initiative to host people. They were willing to take over the experience themselves, which is what I love even today. When I go there after the initial introductions, all I do is stand back and watch the boys take over. In fact, Stanzen and Norbu is of course the dad's, who's our chief spotter, and Stanzen's our manager now. Stanzen started off as a driver for the lodge, but then we were seeing people write more about him and talk more about him over time. So it was a beautiful trip both of us did through South India, staying in some friends' lodges. And he was taught the way, like the right way of doing things, but it didn't change what character he was. And ever since, he's been our manager for the last 2 years, and he's been our front. I mean, I just go there to make sure the guests are healthy, guests are fine, but it's all down to the team of spotters and Stanzen, and that's how it's been for us. So we've been lucky that way. The Ladakhis are open to the idea of tourism, open to communicating with strangers, open to having a good laugh. So
yeah,
it's been beautiful. So we have not had
learning it.
really any problem. But in the way of having something formal, except for the initial training done by the Snow Leopard Conservancy for people to how to maintain a homestay and how to be a spotter in the wild, everything else even there is learnt by the interest of the spotters and
By
the
this.
managers.
Fantastic, fantastic. Ratika, what is your experience with naturalists?
With the private, like our resident naturalists, of course, they've all come, with different backgrounds, and the field experience ultimately is what helped them, gain popularity with the guests. And as far as the forest guides goes, it really depends. They do have, training that they impart, across, the core gates as well as the buffer gates. But the difference is definitely there when you compare, the quality of guides and the knowledge between, the core zone and the buffer zone. But that's ultimately to do with less tourists going, to the buffer zones. If, more guests started, going to the buffer zone, those guides would also get more opportunity to, interact and get more field experience.
Field experience.
Yeah. So that would
no, my point is how do you train a naturalist to engage with your audience? They could be if you don't want them to drive around the national park chasing after a tiger, you have to be stopping and telling them story about every part of the jungle. And that, apart from training, I think the CC Africa lodges in their initial stretch where they trained a lot of they did a fantastic job with it. So how is that? How are you dealing with that? How does your training work towards that?
It's easy to do with our resident naturalists because they know the philosophy of the lodge, right? So they know that even if there's, guest who's not so interested in, the entire, ecosphere, they have to get them interested. It's about, letting your passion sort of flow through. But with the forest guides, we then generally what happens is there are select guides who are a lot more, they take a lot more initiative. So those are the ones that our guests prefer to go with, and they get
absolutely. Yeah, they get more opportunities. Yeah. Daleep, this is to you. And I know having a head naturalist who kind of really puts out the key narrative of a lodge is very important. And then it becomes easier to train other people. And Manoj is full of stories, right? I mean, you drive from point A to point B 10 minutes and you have so many stories coming out of him. That kind of engages the audience. So even if you're not seeing much, but there is so much to see, right?
Yeah, I'm actually very proud of Manoj and really happy that he is with us. He came to the Corbett landscape some 30 years ago. He used to work in the corporate world and he fell in love with the forest here. He started off as a birder and he's still a birder. He writes for various magazines. And not to sort of pat my own back, rather pat his back. We had Their Majesties, the King and Queen of Sweden, stay with us this winter for one short night. And as soon as the Queen alighted from the jeep, Manoj had brought her in from their drive from the Rishikesh side. And she said, he has been one of the best naturalists I have ever had. So it was amazing to hear that. And one of the first things she said to me. But coming back to your earlier question about what happens with naturalists, how do they get trained? Corbett conducts a lot of these training sessions, and a lot of our naturalists have at some point, incidentally or directly, been trained by somebody from the park, and they have brought in people from the Wildlife Institute, from the BNHS, to come and impart this training. A lot of our naturalists are actually, farm workers like Hira Lalji and Balam, who goes for these walks on the riverbed. These guys know intricately what the forest is all about. They have an innate sense and understanding of the area that they live in, and they've had stories and understandings.
Balam is the one who can smell things, right? He says,
yes, you can smell a tiger. So yeah, it's a mixed bag of different ways. We also do a little bit of training ourselves with the forest guides that you have to take on your jeep. We invite them during the monsoon. I don't know how we'll do it this year, but we do a sort of an update and sort of with principles and better spotting and information on insects or butterflies or other little things normally would have paid attention to. So yeah.
Great. And now the inevitable question, of course, and this is from Jeru. Hi, Jeru, good to have you here. How will wildlife tourism shape up in the forthcoming season? Will masks, social distancing protocols all be in place? Daleep, let's begin with you answering that question.
Well, I think in many ways, all our properties are already sort of social distance friendly. We're not a sort of a one block hotel. We have that are spread out. So I think the way we are thinking about it is, on your walks, you can do social distancing. You can wear your mask. You can wear that shield. Your dining can happen in different areas of the property, and you can separate the dining experience as well. Safaris, I'm not quite sure how that will happen, but normally what happens with us is that it's just one family or members of the same family that go on a safari.
One safari.
Or to a jeep, most often than not. And so I reckon the only person who's going to be not of the family is the driver and the naturalist, and they sit in front.
In the front, absolutely. And,
So, yeah.
Yeah, Ratika, so...
Similarly, I think at the lodge, I don't think there should be, much issue handling, all the required protocols. Safaris, we are yet to hear formally from the department, but of course, internally, we've decided, that sharing safari should happen for the same group and not, from, with guests from different. So that would help. And I'm not sure how the naturalist, probably the naturalists will be able to go on the safari if only there are two guests. I mean, because otherwise it'll be, difficult.
Yes.
We already
Yes.
have
Yeah.
mandatory to have the forest guide and, the drivers. So, but, the lodge itself, the spaces, this.
Yeah. There's a lot of space. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
the hygiene, of course, everything will be, taken care.
Absolutely. Yeah. Ali, what do you think? You're in 40 acres, so already a lot of distance.
Correct. No, so just before I answer that, just coming back to the naturalist and guide question, the idea just came about in my mind. Organization like Responsible Tourism Society of India probably can do a standardized, at least for the park guides,
Yes.
first maybe focusing on some landscape and then expanding to probably all over India and having a standardized guide training, just like I think the society is doing a standardized tourism protocol, tying up with the government. So similar to that, we could also have initiate a guide
training program. Yeah, I think that would be fantastic. Yeah.
Just a thought. And now coming back to the norms, we've been discussing quite extensively what is going to happen post-COVID. I think the safaris anyway will not start before October. We are all going into the off season, and it'll be better to kind of plan closer to the date because the conditions are changing so fast. But generally, obviously, as the others have pointed out, that the lodges are all spread out, so social distancing is anyway, inbuilt in the system. Activities like walks, if you focus on the non-jeep safaris, a lot of things are anyway
taken care of. Yeah.
safe to do. So it's very difficult to say now, but I just hope things shape out in such a way that we don't have to do too many protocols, so that at least the charm of being in the forest is maintained. And one more thing is, at least in our lodges, the staff stay in the property itself, so they are kind of isolated. We have to actually convince our staff that they are safe from the guests who are coming. That is one thing that they're actually very worried about, because it's in the rural areas, it's become a mindset that it's first of all, it was a disease or problem got from international tourists, and then now the city people have it. So most, at least Bori and Reni Pani, and I'm sure the other areas where the lodges are, they are all COVID-free places. So the guests who are coming from the cities are from kind of red zone. So we have to actually do a lot of training for our staff to be able to, feel safe once things reopen.
Absolutely. Yeah.
The best.
Surya, yeah. Surya, yeah.
So I think
post-COVID.
Post-COVID, so Hashim and me have been having a lot of drunken chats in the evening, and we've kind of concluded that the virus doesn't survive above 4,000 meters, and that's where our lodge is. So that is our only way forward, I think. But I
try when you're sober and tell me what you think.
So right now we're just going to wait and watch. I don't think our operating at Leopard Lodge is going to be a problem, because we are anyway a very small community in the mountains. We are in 2 blocks, and the guests are pretty much going in their own vehicles, going in different directions, or they're walking. So the stress is actually going to come from where it's going to be in the public transport. It's going to be in the flights that come in. It's going to be in the hotels, which are where people are staying in Delhi. It's going to be on the flight to Leh. I think that is the protocols we are looking forward to kind of right now, because at the lodge we're all wildlife lodges. All of us work in a very niche way, and we're not big blocks of buildings where hundreds of people are staying. So I think the challenge is going to be how people get into the country and how they travel from destination to destination, rather than what people are going to do in each.
And bringing healthy travelers in.
Yes, absolutely. One other thing I'd like to add, Shoba, if you don't mind, to Ali's and I think Ratika and everyone was talking about guide training. I have seen over the years that as long as the guides don't have an initiative to improve, I don't see a difference happening. I think as long as there's a rotation system that where every second day they're going to get a safari, irrespective of whether they're as good as the previous guide, I'm not sure that's going to make a difference. I think it has to be an initiative-based system, like how lodge naturalists are. If you're good, you stay. If you're not good, you find a different place. I mean, that's kind of how it should be. Or you have to improve to make sure you get the right kind of guests coming to you.
Absolutely. Improve,
So,
upskill yourself every.
yes, absolutely. So I think the guide should have that system in place rather than having an employ all, benefit all kind of thing. Because this is tourism, this is a person-to-person industry, and there has to be initiative for improvement.
Absolutely. I completely agree with you. I completely agree. Thank you, Ratika, Surya, Daleep, Ali. I think we could be talking. We are already 23 minutes beyond our scheduled time, but it was wonderful chatting with you. To everybody who is tuned in, thank you so much for watching. Tomorrow is the World Environment Day, June 5th. I'd like to tell you that it is your personal interest and your personal initiative to ensure that the planet stays healthy and we kind of protect everything that is important to us. This is Rare India's Destination Discovery Series, the last of which is Nature and Wildlife. I sign off by saying that we are proud members of Responsible Tourism Society of India. Please write in to info@rareindia.com if you have any questions. And if you want to address any questions to the panelists, you can write to us. We'll have, we have all their emails and we can share it with you. And thank you once again for joining in. Stay tuned also for 2 more live chats on Instagram, on Insta Live at rareindia.com coming up shortly. Thank you very much.